My name is Bob Darrow, and I am alcoholic. And I'm sober only through the grace of a God that I was afraid to believe in, that I've accessed and maintained in my life through a process outlined in a book entitled Alcoholics Anonymous, the ability to remain sponsorable, and a persistent and consistent effort in our primary purpose of trying to forget ourselves and devote our lives to helping others. And consequently, I haven't had a drink or any mind or emotion altering medication since October 31st, 1978. My personal best, actually. I want to thank the committee. I'll mention Ollie and Butch by name because if I aggravate you by my talk, you'll have someone to be mad at now. They asked me. And I want to thank my wife, my beautiful wife, for coming up here and traveling halfway across the country to be here. And she's heard me 500 times, and she still likes to listen to me, which is, there's not even a program for that. I mean, I'd like to welcome anybody that's new. Glad you're here. I want to talk about something that almost killed me. My inability to do step one. I think it's the hardest thing an alcoholic ever has to do. It's so difficult to really do it that most of us don't, and we relapse ourselves to death. And that was sure the case for me. On page 30, in the beginning of the second paragraph, it talks about step one in a way that's important to me. It says that we learned, which implies an ongoing process. We learned that we had to fully, which fully is a lot, it's like more than half. We learned we had to fully concede to our innermost selves, not up here. That's why the academic approaches to recovery have always failed for the most part. We'd learned we had to fully concede to our innermost self, in that place inside you and inside of me where there's no cognizant debate, there's no chatter, you just know. You connect the dots. You get it. We learned we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This, the book says, is the first step in recovery. I couldn't do that. I have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. Dr. Silkworth says that if you have this mind, you can't differentiate the true from the false. I believe things and bet my life on things that aren't true. Do it over and over. I don't even learn. In AA, people talk about learning from other people's mistakes. I couldn't even learn from my own. You know, right? I had from 1971 as a young kid, not old enough to take a legal drink. I went to my first treatment center, my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and from 71 to 78, I was in and out of institutions. I was living on the streets the last couple of years, like an animal. I didn't understand what was killing me. And alcoholism, if you have what I have, the real sickness of alcoholism hides in a forest of other problems. You see, you don't understand. My case is a little different. I did heroin. I did coke. I did speed. I did pills. I suffer from depression. I suffer from anxiety to the point where I might have a nervous breakdown. I suffer from this feeling of anxious apartness where I don't fit. I don't feel the way that you guys seem to feel and look. I have money problems. I have job problems. I have relationship problems. I have family problems. I have a whole plethora of problems. And so it's pretty hard to go, yeah, my real problem is alcoholism. What about all this? What about all this? And Marty and I were over, we spent some bunch of time during the pandemic over on the island of Maui. And there's a tree in the square in Lahaina. It's one of the world's largest banyan trees. If you've ever seen it, it's really remarkable. It's almost a block, and it's looks like a forest, but it's actually just one tree. And in the very center is where it all comes from, the original trunk. And out of that, it grew all these other trunks, these other branches, all this other stuff. And alcoholism is like that for me. And I had a hard time fully conceding to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic because I had all these other problems. And isn't it odd if you come here with all bunch of other problems and you find your alcoholism and you throw this program of action at it, how often these other problems seem to solve themselves. I bet you there's people in here with a lot of problems. How many people in here, in addition to being alcoholic, how many people had a problem with cocaine, for example? Raise your hand. Oh, okay. Maybe a fourth, third of the room. How about heroin or narcotics, opiates? About another third of the room, maybe. How about gambling? Oh, we got some gambling. How about, here's one, let's see how many hands go. How about porno? Oh, you Canadians. Oh, yeah. Now I know why you like to come to Vegas. How about depression? How about anxiety and fear? How about money? Another fourth of the room. Now, how about alcohol? Oh my God, everybody except a couple wandering Al-Anons raised their hand. See, that's why we're all here, right? You can have a lot of other problems. But we encourage you to find your alcoholism. Why? Well, in our book it says that those who do not recover, and this applies to me for years, are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. As long as I suspected my case was different, I didn't have to completely buy everything you do. I didn't have to. Why would I? I mean, nobody comes to AA after burning your life to the ground and looks at the 12 steps and goes, oh, I can't wait to do this. Nobody says that. A few Al-Anons say it for their husbands, but nobody says that. It looks like punishment for being an idiot. So what had to happen to me? Well, I suffered my way into the truth. I suffered my way into step one. I don't know any other way to do it. I mean, it's not that I don't believe people can't hear someone talk about alcoholism or read it in a book and go, oh yeah, and completely concede to their innermost self, but that's not my story. I'm recovery resistant. And I got the mind of a chronic alcoholic. If you got that mind, you'll forget everything you should remember. And you'll remember everything you should forget. You know, I'll forget that I was sobbing uncontrollably, checking into detox, swearing to myself, I'll never drink again. I forget that. You know what I remember? I remember those couple times that were a lot of fun when I was 18 years old. You know what I mean? I remember that. Now, the problem when Sokor says we can't differentiate the true from the false, that's not true anymore. In late-stage alcoholism, one of the horrible things that happens to guys like me is it turns on us. And what used to be spectacular and magnificent now has become depressing and lonely and pathetic. And I don't know what's wrong with me. And what's killing me in the years I was in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, in and out of treatment centers, what was killing me was hope. The hope that somehow, someday, some way, I'm going to jumpstart that party. I'm going to enjoy it like I used to enjoy it, and I'm going to control it enough to keep the damage down to something reasonable. I never suspected, when I was in a halfway house and I went and got a bottle of vodka or something, I never suspected there's not going to be any consequences. Of course there's going to be some consequences. My delusion is I can keep it down to something reasonable. That's my delusion. and I never could. I never knew what was going to happen to me when I started to drink, except for one thing for sure. I was going to keep drinking until I was stopped, and I had to be stopped. I've never been in the middle of a run and think to myself, you know, if I keep going, it's going to be really bad in about 3 days. I'm going to quit. I couldn't do it. I mean, I could think that. I just couldn't do it. Because my powerlessness extends into a lot of different areas. It's more than just the fact that you come to AA and you're in trouble. So I didn't understand what it was to be an alcoholic. I would, in the early and mid-70s, I would go to meetings and I would hear people talk about what Dr. Silkworth says, and they would use different words, but it was always the same. That if you're an alcoholic, you have an allergic reaction to alcohol, an abnormal allergic reaction to alcohol. Only occurs in you, only in alcoholics. Non-alcoholic heroin addicts don't have this. They can drink, they just shouldn't do heroin. Non-alcoholic cocaine addicts, they don't have it. Gamblers, they don't have it. But what makes me an alcoholic and differentiates me, as Silkworth says, sets me apart as a distinct entity, is that when I start drinking, something happens to me that only happens to alcoholics. And what is that? Well, our book refers to it as a phenomenon of craving. I remember listening to people talk about it, and I thought, craving? I mean, I'm in trouble, but I don't have a craving. I don't pick up a drink and then claw the walls to get it. I don't have a craving. And I don't know that if you're alcoholic, your sickness uses your own mind against you. See, I can't see the craving. I'll tell you a little story. I haven't told this in a while. I used to tell it a lot. I was 18 years old, and I was maybe 19, almost. I was 18 or 19, and I was dating a girl, and she invited me over to her parents' house to spend the evening. She wanted me to meet her family, right? Have dinner. I went, and it was one of those, I was in my better living through chemistry phase of my alcoholism. Now, you couldn't have got me, you could have asked, put me on a lie detector, said, is there a way that you're alcoholic? I said, no. You have a problem with drugs? Well, I did, but I'm over that now. And I was in that one of those little periods where you clean your act up, you know, and I go to dinner, and I would have sworn I wasn't, I'm not alcoholic. And they brought out a bottle of wine at dinner. Now, this is not the kind of bottle of wine we would buy. This is a little wimpy Al-Anon kind of bottle of wine. You know, like low alcohol. I like wine that's 20% alcohol. It's never seen a grape, you know. This is like real wine from grapes and stuff. It's like 11, something like Blue Nun or something. Some wimpy wine. I like get you downtown now wine. This had a cork. No good wine has a cork. But they bring out this bottle of wine, they have dinner, they pour us all a glass. You know, I've always drank quickly. I think evaporation's a childhood issue with me or something. I don't know what that is, but I drink quickly. I'll drink a soda faster than most people. I'll drink a cup of coffee quick. Drink quick. And because I drink quick, I've killed 2 glasses out of that bottle. Now the bottle's dead. They're still sipping on their first glass because they don't know how to drink. They're still sipping on their first glass, and I got 2 glasses of wine in me, and I'm looking at that dead bottle on that table. And I'm getting a little antsy, getting a little irritable. You know, the conversation earlier in the evening had been okay and sort of all right. Now it's starting to become stupid and irritating and tedious. But I don't say anything because I'm a nice guy. And I finally blurted out, I said, God, that was good wine. I was hoping they'd go to the cabinet and bring out a couple more bottles, right? They said, sorry, we don't have any more. They went back to talking, and I'm sitting there, and you know how you talk to yourself in your head? It's getting a little panicky in here. And I finally blurted out, I said, you know, I like beer. And they said, well, we don't have any beer. Next time you come over, Bob, we'll get a 6-pack of beer. And they went back to talking. And I'm sitting there, and I feel like I'm going to lose it. And I didn't know what to do, so I excused myself. I went to their bathroom, locked the door, started rummaging through their cabinets. I found an unopened bottle of cough medicine that was 35% alcohol plus codeine and terpenhydrate, which is a bonus. And I sat on the edge of that bathtub and I chugged that bottle of cough medicine, and within seconds, that craziness in my head just went, and I was able to think. I can't think well with untreated alcoholism. I could think. And I came up with a story. I went back out to that dinner table and I explained to them how I'd forgotten to take care of something. Oh my God, I'm so sorry to leave. And we'll have to do this again. I went and I got in my car. It was parked right in front of their house. I drove down their street 20, 25 miles an hour like you're supposed to, turned the corner and drove about 80 miles an hour like a maniac to get to my friend Brett's house, because Brett had some Thai stick in a bar in his basement because I had 2 glasses of wine. I was the only person at that dinner table that had alcoholism, or else we'd all been on our way to Brett's house. You know what I'm saying? Right? But I have a reaction, and I don't think that's a craving. To me, it just looks like all of a sudden I got a good idea. I need that to drink that bottle of cough medicine. It seems like a good idea. It uses my own mind. That's how many of us have been in trouble for drinking, and maybe you're on your lunch hour and your boss is on your back about drinking and smelling like alcohol, so you go to the bar and you get, okay, I'll have 2, just 2. He won't know, because I'll do vodka. You can't smell vodka. Everybody knows that. I'm going to have 2 vodka. Vodka's and orange juice. Kind of make it a health drink, you know? I'm going to have 2 of those, and I'm going to go back to work. And you get to the second one, and you realize that 2 is a stupid number. And I didn't know I think I changed my mind. I don't know that is an allergic reaction to alcohol, because it doesn't happen in non-alcoholics. Well, if that was all there was to alcoholism, I wouldn't be chronic. And I think there's different types of alcoholics. In our book, on page 20 and 21, it talks about 2 types of drinkers. It talks about 3, actually, but we'll discount the first one because that person can take it or leave it alone. That's an Al-Anon thing. We don't do that. The first type of drinker has what you could easily refer to as acute alcoholism, serious. The book says that this person is drinking habitually to the point of mental and physical impairment, has the habit badly enough to gradually impair it. It may even cause him to die a few years before he should have died. Bad, that's not good. But here's the difference. That person, if a serious enough reason can come to their senses and realize, oh my God, she's going to leave me if I keep drinking. The judge is going to sentence me if I keep drinking. The doctor said I'm going to get sick if I keep drinking. And for a sufficiently strong reason, he comes to his senses, he puts the plug in the jug and rides off into the sunset, may or may not come to AA, but that person has within them what is necessary to be comfortable and reasonably okay sober without any treatment for what happens to them when they stop drinking. But I'm a chronic alcoholic, and like all chronic diseases, such as diabetes, certain heart disease, the physical stabilization of the sickness is just a beginning in a lifetime of treatment. And that's the guy I am. I had no idea in the treatment center after treatment center, when I would swear to myself, sobbing, that I'll never touch that stuff again. I had no idea that my alcoholism chases me up into my abstinence like a pack of rabid dogs and just nips at me and nips at me. And it does it through the way that Sokor talks about, through my emotions, through my thoughts. After a time sober, I become restless. You know that unsettled feeling, you ever watch a dog circle the living room trying to find its spot to lay down? I'm a dog that can't find its spot. Wherever I am, I need to be somewhere else. Gotta go. This isn't it. This is not it. It looks like it's not it. Gotta be somewhere else. I'm irritable. Don't know I'm irritable. Don't want to be irritable. Irritable people irritate the crap out of me. I am not irritable. But I'm very bright. And when you're very bright, you can see the stupidity in people quickly, can't you? It's a gift. It's a gift. I just, everywhere I go, I'm sober. And everywhere I go, sober. It's stupid people. I go to work. They were nice when they interviewed me. Now I'm there a week. Oh, there's some stupid people where I work. Traffic, stupid people in traffic, stupid people on TV, politicians, stupid people. Go to those AA meetings, they got all the stupid people grouped in one room. Oh my God! I mean, AA was offensive to me. All this happy, clappy, grateful for everything stuff. Stop it! Oh, and again, everybody loves God. God, oh, jeez. Oh my God. Jim, you ever been newly sober, depressed, just depressed, feel horrible, just burnt my life to the ground, this is not good, and have some yahoo in AA come up to you and says, has anyone told you they love you today? Oh, you know a hug's coming, don't touch me, don't touch me. Oh, and you guys, God did this, God did that. I'm an atheist. It's offensive to me. It's intellectually offensive. And so I have a mind that looks for the differences. I have a mind that wants to maintain the separation. I have a mind that doesn't want me with you. So I look for the differences. I keep myself separate and apart from. Wilson uses a term in the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions I love. He calls it a state of anxious apartness. Man, when first time I read that, I thought, oh my God, I felt that most of my life. I felt it in grade school. I felt it growing up. I felt it on jobs. I felt it in AA. That feeling that it's all of you and then there's me. Separate and apart from. Almost as if there's some invisible yet impenetrable barrier between me and you and me in life, and I can't get through it. And the only thing that dissolves away that barrier was about 5 shots of whiskey, and I could come out and play. The problem with late-stage alcoholism, alcohol stops, even though I'm obsessed with the effect that was once produced by alcohol, it stops producing that effect. And so at the end of my drinking, I drank in depression. I drank in horrible, horrible feelings of loneliness. I felt so lost. I hated myself for the things I've done to the people that cared about me. I can't stand myself when I'm sober, and now I drink and I'm pathetic and depressed. I'm the guy who if you're letting me sleep on your couch because I got nowhere to go, 4 a.m., 4:30 in the morning, I'll be just so lonely. I'll get on your telephone and start calling people. I called an ex-girlfriend about 4:30 in the morning one time. The minute I heard her voice, I started crying into the phone. We should have got married. And then her husband gets on and threatens me. I mean, jeez. This is not a party. This is not a party. It's pathetic. And I don't know what's wrong with me. But it doesn't look like alcoholism. And my mother was a therapist, and I through a little bit of help from her and a little bit of help from some psychologists that I worked with, I actually became a counselor. Why would I do that? You know why? Because I got one of those egos that fancies it will find transformation and power in knowledge. And I'll tell you, truly, truly, all I've ever found in knowledge was fodder for my ego to puff me up into being the I know guy. And so I worked in the field, and I was just so, that smugness about me, because I had information, and I was separate and apart from. And I drank. And I drank and I hid it until I couldn't hide it anymore, and I lost my last job working as a counselor, and didn't really didn't really hold another job except for, I think I did a little telemarketing, which speaks volumes of my spiritual condition. I did a little bit of that, and that was pretty much it until I got sober in 1978. And so when I say my name's Bob and I'm an alcoholic, I'm saying a whole lot here. I'm saying that there was a time in my life when alcohol did something for me that it doesn't do for non-alcoholics. It doesn't do it for my daughter. It doesn't do it for my sister. If alcohol did for them what it did for me, they'd drink the way I drank. Do you know what it does for them? They get a feeling like they're losing control. It gets them tipsy. It gets them like, they don't want that. They don't like that. They like a little bit. My daughter likes a beer, like just to get a little, tiny little bit of a buzz, but that's it. Oh, not too much. You know, do you ever watch a non-alcoholic drink? Oh my God. 5 inches from heaven and they go home. I mean, it's crazy. I've watched my sister drink over the years like your cat will watch you eat a tuna fish sandwich. I mean, I watch my sister. And I start to drink, and I'll drink like other people. I have an abnormal reaction to alcohol. And then what almost killed me and makes me a chronic alcoholic rather than a guy with a drinking problem is I have an abnormal reaction to abstinence. And it eats my lunch. And I don't understand it. And I can't put my finger on what's wrong. But do you know that feeling after you're sober about 3 months is something ain't right? Something ain't right. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's wrong because I wish I could put my finger on it. So I'd tell you. I remember a counselor one time. I was sober a couple months in a halfway house, and he came up to me. I guess I looked like I was not doing well emotionally, I suppose. He came up to me and he said, "Bob, what's wrong?" And I remember looking at him thinking, "Oh, God, I'd like to tell you. Maybe you could help me. But I don't know. It's just that nothing's right. I ain't right. I'm sober. How come I feel like this? I'm sober. I got a job. How come I feel so empty and so lost and so depressed and so lonely? Because I'm an alcoholic. All I've done is take away the alcohol and I'm left with the ick. And the ick is what eats my lunch." You know what happens. We suffer our way back to picking up a drink again. I always did. I did it every time. If you have chronic alcoholism and you have not developed and maintained some sort of spiritual connection here, and you're not helping anybody except yourself, I think the question is not if you're going to drink again. If you're like me, I think the question is when. 5 years, I've seen people drink. I've seen people stay physically sober for 10, 15, 20 years and then either drink again or stick a pistol in their mouth and blow it because they have to escape, because alcoholism demands treatment one way or another. And I go to Alcoholics Anonymous every day. I'm an everyday member, not because of the Earl Treat version of the third tradition and the abbreviated short form. I go because of what Wilson originally wrote in the long form of the third tradition. He said, membership should include all who suffer from alcoholism. I suffer from alcoholism. Now, on a good day, on a good spiritual hair day, I don't know it. I feel good. I'm productive. I'm working. I get along with people. I'm good. But it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much for me just to get a little bit off. You know what I mean? You know what happens when you get a little bit off? I get this thing inside me. I don't know what to call it. So I call it the noticer. When I get a little off spiritually, it just comes on. And I just start noticing. You know, I notice how you... And guys like me, left unchecked, untreated, can literally judge themselves right out of Alcoholics Anonymous, one judgment at a time. I've watched some people go to their death. Good people with kids that love them. I've watched some people go to their death because of a thing called alcoholism. There's a line in our book, it says, the alcoholic's problem lies mainly in his mind. That's bad information. Because I'm a thinker. You know, I'm not an innermost self. When you scare me, you frustrate me, I get a little uptight, I get resentful. What do? The first thing I do is I want to go somewhere and think. Right? I want to think. I mean, I've never been more self-centered and self-obsessed than when I'm in a depression. Because when I'm in a depression, I am pondering myself deeply. Never worked out well for me. And I get thirsty. And you know what happens? This Silkworth says that guys like me, we get restless, irritable, discontent, unless I can again experience that sense of ease and comfort, which I had once at one time found in taking a few drinks. I can't get the ease and comfort anymore, but I'm hoping I can. And eventually, when I'm just up to here with these squirmy little feelings I don't understand, when I'm just up to here with being sober, I start fantasizing something. I start remembering how it was when I was 18 years old. You know, when I was playing in the band, went to the guy after, at the break, I was talking to this girl. I ended up getting laid. I had fun. I was laughing with some guys. See, I remember that. I don't remember the suicidal depression. I don't remember the truth. I remember the false. And so in 1978, I tried to kill myself because I was literally in a trap I could not spring. Not only was I powerless over alcohol once I started drinking it, I was powerless over abstinence. It didn't matter how much. There were times, honest to God, there were times when I would swear to myself and mean it that I'm never going to drink again, and I don't think a human being could mean it any more than I meant it at those times. And then to my horror, 3 months, 3 weeks, 6 months later, I'm back at it again. Because you know what happens? This restless, irritable discontent causes a yearning for something that's unachievable. Carl Jung, in a letter to Bill Wilson's, nailed something. He said that the alcoholic, as a result of working with Roland Hazard and a lot of alcoholics, he thought that the alcoholic's thirst for alcohol wasn't really a thirst for alcohol. Looks like it. He said he thought it was a low-level thirst of the alcoholic's very being for unity, or if you're more religiously minded, a union with God. And I think that's right. Because as I worked the steps, as I devoted my life to helping God's kids, and that is the primary way to get closer to God, get closer to his kids. Help his kids. And as I started to do that, the thirst started dialing down. I haven't had a thought of a drink for many decades. But I believe it waits for me. In 1978, I went to a bridge to kill myself because I was in this trap. Drinking was horrible, not drinking is horrible. And I went to this bridge and I couldn't do it. And I know something, that bridge waits patiently for me. The delusion that I'm like other people, or that I presently may be like other people. You know, how alcoholic could you be if you haven't had a drink for over 43 and a half years? I mean, how alcoholic could you be, for God's sakes? The delusion that I'm like other people, or I presently may be, has to be smashed. The bridge waits for me. And I think the end of your drinking waits for you. And the problem with that, in this progressiveness of alcoholism, and some of you know that if you've relapsed for a number of years, every time it's a little worse, isn't it? Every time you hate yourself a little bit more. Every time you get sober again, your family's even more like this. Every time you're a little worse than you were the last time. Over any considerable period, our book says we get worse, never better. And so I know what waits for me. If you could drink again after 10 years sober and pick up where you left off, you'd have a chance. The problem is you've had 10 years sober in the rooms, and your alcoholism has progressed while you were here. You don't know it. But if you watch people who come to AA, and I've watched dozens of them, they stay sober 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and they drink again. I watched them when they came in 30 years ago. They don't pick up where they left off. They don't have a chance. Very few people make it back. It takes a massive surrender to get back into the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. A massive surrender. And so I know what waits for me. I know what I have today. I don't kid myself. That's why I'm an everyday member of Alcoholics Anonymous, because if I don't do AA, I will suffer myself back to drinking again. I've been going to Skid Row detoxes in Las Vegas, minimum of, usually twice a week. There's times I've been doing 3-4 times a week. Vegas is a great place. If you take a drink in Ontario, Vegas will call you. I'm telling you. We get from all over the world. They call it the hitting bottom capital of the world. You know, the people come to Vegas, and Vegas will, you could have $4 million in your retirement fund. Vegas will take that away from you so quick, make your head spin. And you end up in our detox. You end up in our detox. And you don't know what happened to you. I had one guy, he told me this story. He said he had been 17 years sober, and he drank again and lost everything. And he said, I don't know why I drank. My life was never better. He said, I had a $500,000 home. I had 2 paid-for cars. I had a wife and 3 little kids that adored me. I was making big money. The boss loved me. As it says in that one story in the book, not a cloud on the horizon. Right? He picked up a drink. And he was baffled, as if the car, the house, the kids were a treatment for alcoholism. If you were to run into a guy who just came out of a coma for chronic diabetes, and he said, I don't know why I went into a diabetic coma. I had a new car. You know, what do you want? You want to slap him? What, you just want to shake him? You know, what's wrong with you? But in alkalogic, crap like that makes sense. And so in 1978, after a failed suicide attempt, I did something I'd never done before. I was surrendered by the bottle enough to listen to somebody else. And I got my first sponsor, and I said to him, if you'll sponsor me, I'll do anything you ask me to do. And that was the pivotal moment in my life. That was the moment that I was willing to get my life out of the hands of the idiot that had been running it. And my life started to change. And just like a water skier where the rope pulls tight, I just came up out of the drift. And I've never stopped. And I've been holding on to that rope. And I've had a sponsor nonstop for all this time. Because I don't want to go down the road that I see people sober, some of them longer than I am, where they start to sponsor themselves. They stop helping people. One of the things that seems to be universal, if you go to a detox, you run into somebody that drank after 10 years, you'll find one thing that's universal. And it's not that they stopped going to meetings. I know people that went to 2 meetings and drank the same day. It's not that they stopped having a relationship with God. I've sponsored clergy who prayed more in one day and read more spiritual books in one day than I would read or pray in a week. What's the common denominator? Go up to the person that had had 10 years and say this to them. and see if you don't find what I've found consistently. Say, I am so sorry you're here. I'd like to help. If you give me a list of names and phone numbers of the people in their first 30 or 60 days that you're sponsoring, I'd be glad to call them and help them get, I'll fill in for you. They usually won't have a list because their primary purpose has become themselves. And it's stopped being helping God's kids. When it says in the book that selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of our troubles, that's what makes me thirsty. If I get me on me long enough, I'll start yearning for freedom. Freedom from what? From the bondage of self. The problem is, I got alcoholism. I'll forget. Or my head will tell me lies. It'll say things to me like, Bob, you haven't had a drink for 43 years. You know, they didn't even have light beer when you were drinking. Now, what about this thing you hear these newcomers talking about that's so amazing, this Jägermeister? They didn't have that. But they had throwing my guts up. They had wishing I was dead. They had the loss of all hope. Because alcoholism doesn't change. The brands may change. Cities may change as you run away from yourself. But alcoholism doesn't change. It's the same for me today in Ontario as it will be Monday in Las Vegas as it was in Pennsylvania in 1976, 77, 78. It doesn't change. So I shovel crap against the tide here. The tide of recurring self-centeredness and recurring alcoholism. You know, I often think about myself as, I got surrendered by the bottle. You know, when you're surrendered, you know one thing for sure. You're not the I know guy anymore. You used to be. You used to be the guy you couldn't tell anybody anything to, because I know. But when you're really surrendered, you only know one thing, and that one thing is the most important thing you would ever know. It's what the Buddhists refer to as enlightenment. You know you don't know. And when you know you don't know, you have emptied yourself for the most part of self. Like the back of a toilet tank, you flush the toilet and it just empties out. But chronic alcoholism is a guarantee that it will immediately, you'll start filling up with you again. Almost, it's a crazy, I've had experiences, and some of you I'm sure have had the same experience, where you just in a 12-step call, or you just listen to a 5th step. Oh my God, me and God are like this. I should have a tent and a tambourine. I mean, we are plugged in. We're plugged in. And then you go to a meeting on this spiritual high, you're on. Go to a meeting. You just sit there, and the noticer sneaks up on you. He had 4 cups of coffee and didn't put any money in the basket. And all the connectedness immediately shifted back into separation. And my sponsor was a guy named Chuck Chamberlain, and Chuck used to say that there was one problem that contained all problems, and that was conscious and unconscious separation between me and you, me and God, and me and life. Alcoholism's a lonely business. And when drinking stops being a treatment for that, it's really a lonely business. Thanks for listening.